week 3 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters that looked hit off the wire this week. The first hitter, Michael Busch of the Chicago Cubs. So Michael Busch, he's been on a tear so far in the early going for this Chicago Cub team, and I thought it was a nice deal for the Cubs where this Dodger team, they just didn't have anywhere to play him, and they traded him in the offseason. So on the season for Busch, one of the best players so far in the early going. 5 home runs, 11 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a 311 batting average, and a 385 on base. So Michael Busch, he's putting the ball in play. He's showing good pop, and he qualifies at first and third base as well, which can help fantasy owners in a big way. And he's one of the hottest hitters in all the major leagues. So the last few games for Busch: April 9th at the Padres, 1 for 4. April 10th at the Padres, 1 for 2, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 12th at the Mariners, 2 for 4, a homer in that one, an RBI. April 13th at Seattle, 2 for 4 with a homer. And April 14th at Seattle, 2 for 4 with a homer and 2 RBIs. So he's been on a tear. 4 games in a row with a home run is Michael Busch. And now the Chicago Cub team, they go to a great hitters park in Arizona coming up this week here to start the week off. So right now, like I said, former top prospect in the Dodger system, gets traded to the Cubs, getting everyday at-bats, good versatility, first and third, qualifying that. And he's just showing power and batting average. And right now, he's a must-add in fantasy leagues. The next ad's Brandon Marsh of the Philadelphia Phillies. So we've seen Brandon Marsh have some value on and off over the last few seasons, but so far off to a great start on the year. 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a stolen base, a 318 average, and a 340 on base. So Brandon Marsh, he's going to hit 15, 20 home runs most likely this season. He'll steal 10, 15 bases, have a good on-base percentage, and a decent batting average. So if you need someone in deeper leagues, that's where I would recommend Marsh for the most part. Available right now in 64% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games for Marsh: April 10th at the Cardinals, 1 for 4 in RBI. April 11th versus the Pirates, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 12th versus the Pirates, 1 for 4, a run. April 13th, he pinched hit in that one, 0 for 1. And April 14th versus the Pirates, 1 for 4. So Marsh, he could do a little bit of everything. Said for the most part, stolen bases, runs scored, on base, and batting average is what Marsh is going to bring fantasy owners. And so far, he's bringing power as well with 4 home runs in the early going. So if you're looking for an outfielder or even a utility man in some deeper leagues, I think he could help in a decent way is Marsh this week. And he's a good ad. The next ad's Jose Caballero of the Tampa Bay Rays. So Caballero, he's been a guy on the radar over the last few weeks, and this most likely is the last chance for owners to go out there and get him. Only available 52% of fantasy leagues. On the season for Caballero, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, 7 runs scored, 5 stolen bases already, a 311 average, and a 333 on base. The stolen bases, runs scored, and a decent on base percentage is what Caballero is going to bring owners. Last season, in only 231 at-bats, he did steal 26 bases, and had a good on base percentage as well with 343, and he qualifies at 2 weak positions at second and shortstop as Caballero. So if you need a hitter in the middle infield and deeper leagues, and if you're looking for stolen bases, this is what he's going to bring. April 9th at the Angels, 3 for 4, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, a stolen base. April 10th at the Angels, 1 for 3 with a homer and an RBI. April 12th versus the San Francisco Giants, 1 for 4. And April 13th versus the Giants, 0 for 4. So right now, Caballero pretty much playing every day. I know he sat out in yesterday's ball game, April 14th, but if you need a guy who's going to steal some bases and score some runs and pretty much play every day, especially with Lowe now out at second base for this Tampa Bay Ray team, he's a solid ad this week. It's Elias Diaz of the Colorado Rockies. So Diaz, he's been a decent hitter over the last few seasons, and we know catch is one of the weakest positions in fantasy baseball. And right now, Diaz, he's red hot on the year. 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 341 average, and a 391 on base. So I know Diaz, the power hasn't shown yet. Last season, he did hit 14 home runs with 72 RBIs and a 267 average, but he's an everyday catcher for this Rocky team. He plays at Coors Field, which is a great hitter's park, obviously, with the altitude and the way the ball carries out. And he's been a professional hitter the last couple of years and has put up some decent numbers. April 9th versus Arizona, 2 for 4, an RBI. April 12th at Toronto, 2 for 4, 2 runs, an RBI. April 13th at Toronto, 1 for 3 with a run. And April 14th at Toronto, we had an off game, 0 for 4. But right now, if you need a catcher, someone who's going to bring some pop here and there, he's going to bring some batting average, I think Diaz could be a decent ad. And right now, he's available in tons of fantasy leagues here. 78%. The next hitter I looked at is his teammate, Brenton Doyle of the Colorado Rockies. So Doyle available in 93% of fantasy leagues, getting an everyday opportunity and making the most of it. On the year, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 309 average, and a 345 on base. And Doyle last season, he did have 400 at-bats, 10 homers, 48 RBIs with the 22 bags. So we know he could steal bases, even though so far this season he hasn't stolen any. Strikes out a whole lot, 151 last season, and already 19 on the year. But like I said, he's getting everyday opportunities. He's showing some pop in the early going, batting 6th to the 9th range for the most part. And someone in deeper leagues as well that I would give an ad. April 10th versus the D-backs 0 for 3. April 12th, Jays 3 for 5, 2 runs and RBI. April 13th at Toronto, 1 for 4, a homer and a rib. And April 14th at Toronto, 0 for 4 in that one. So right now, Doyle getting an everyday opportunity. Like I said, he strikes out a whole lot with 21 strikeouts in the early going this season. But if you could sacrifice some of that and just a guy who's got some pop and could steal bases, I would hope down the line here for this Rocky team and fantasy owners, I would give Doyle an ad this week. The next ad, Orlando Arcia of the Atlanta Braves. I mentioned Arcia as a headliner as an ad last week on the waiver wire, and I'm very surprised he's still out there in 77% of fantasy leagues as Arcia. So on the season, he's been a hit machine once again. I know home runs and RBIs haven't been there, but our batting average and on base definitely has. On the year, no home runs, 3 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 360 average, and a 407 on base. Obviously, batting 7th or 8th usually in this Brave lineup. He's going to get a lot of good pitches where you got an all-star lineup headlined by Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna. So everything's going to be good pitches coming his way. Is Arcia batting late in this order for this Atlanta Brave team, and someone who's going to bring batting average. And I think the power will start getting there as well as the weather gets warmer. Last season, he did have 17 home runs and drove in 65 RBIs with Arcia. So like I said, batting average right now is there. The power will come, and he's an ad this week. April 11th versus the Mets, 0 for 3, a run. April 12th in Miami, 3 for 5, 2 runs and RBI. April 13th at Miami, 0 for 3. And April 14th at the Marlins, 0 for 3. So Arcia, he's hitting the cover off the ball. He's putting the ball in play, no doubt about it. He's only struck out 8 times this season in 53 at-bats, which is a good number. So right now, while he's playing good baseball and showing good average, he's definitely an ad this week. The next ad, Brett Baty of the New York Mets. Brett Baty, former top prospect in the New York Mets system. In the last couple years, he didn't show anything, but so far this year, off to a nice early start on the year. 1 home run, 9 RBI, 6 runs scored for Baty, a 305 batting average and a 339 on base percentage. So Baty, he's not going to verse lefties, it looks like, for the most part. Versus righties, he's going to be there every day for this New York Mets team. And the Mets, they didn't go out there and try to sign a third baseman, and they're sticking with Baty, available right now in 80% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games for Baty, April 11th at the Braves, 1 for 5 in RBI. April 12th versus the Royals, 2 for 4 run, 2 RBIs. April 13th versus the Royals, 0 for 4 run and a rib. And April 14th, he only pinched hit in that ball game, and he won 1 for 1. So right now, Baty's playing good baseball. We'll see if he starts tonight's ball game versus the lefty Martin Perez, which I think they might put him in there because he's not the hardest of throwers. So right now, well, he's off to a good start, and he's batting usually 5th or 6th in this Met lineup here, where we know they need some hitting to get going. Besides Pete Alonso, Alvarez, and Nimmo for the most part, I think Brett Baty is a decent ad this week in deeper leagues. Next hit is Nelson Velasquez of the Kansas City Royals. So Velasquez, last season, he got to look towards the end of the year when we know the Royals were out of it once again. And so far, he's off to a good start on the season, is Velasquez. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a stolen base, a 333 average, and a 385 on base. The only thing with Velasquez, he's a high strikeout type of batter. We saw last season 51 strikeouts, 162 at-bats, and so far we've seen it this year, 20 strikeouts for him in the early going and 51 at-bats. When he puts the ball in play, he makes good contact, good exit velo, and he showed some power as well last season, was Velasquez, with 17 home runs in only 162 at-bats. So another guy I recommend in deeper leagues, 12-team leagues or deeper, and I think he can help fantasy owners with the power and RBI. So the last few games for Velasquez, April 11th versus Houston, 1 for 5, a run and a rib. April 12th at the Mets, 1 for 3. April 13th at the Mets, 2 for 5, a run and a rib. And April 14th at the Mets, 0 for 3. So this week, a good matchup to kick the week off at the White Sox. Well, we know they're one of the worst teams in the league, one of the worst pitching staffs in the league as well. And Velasquez, I think, in deeper leagues is a good ad, available in 82% of fantasy leagues. Next head's Jesse Winker of the Washington Nationals. So Winker, he's having a resurgence in the early going. Played bad over the last few seasons with the Milwaukee Brewers last season, and going back a couple years ago as well with the Mariners, he didn't get anything going. But so far this year for Winker, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, 8 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 340 batting average, and a whopping 480 on base percentage for Winker. So Winker's getting on base. He's getting an everyday opportunity, batting third or fourth for the most part for this national team. And we know this national team, they needed a mixture of veterans and young players on this roster, with Winker obviously being one of the veterans. April 10th at the Giants, 0 for 3 is stolen base. April 12th at the A's, 4 for 4, homer and RBI. April 13th at the A's, 1 for 4 run, a stolen base. And April 14th at Oakland, 1 for 4. So right now he's stealing some bases. He's driving the ball to all fields where that batting average is way up there, and the on base is almost at 500 for Winker. I know it's early season success, and things could turn around quickly where he goes the other way and goes in a big slump, and he's not going to be a viable option. But right now, since he's playing every day and he's going out there and making the most of it, is Winker. He's available in 97% of fantasy leagues, and a hit I looked at in the deepest of leagues. And the final hitter I looked at off the wire this week, Heston Kjerstad of the Baltimore Orioles. So right now he's on a tear in the minor leagues, 7 home runs already is Kjerstad for this Baltimore Orioles team. But I don't know where they're going to put him. Colton Cowser, he's off to a great start. Santander, we know he's a solid hitter for Baltimore. Halladay, they just called up. Kjerstad's an outfielder, and there's not much room out there for him right now, but he might make a play to make it up to the major leagues. Last season, he had a cup of coffee in the majors, 2 homers, 3 RBIs with a 233 average, 281 on base in only 30 at-bats. But right now, he's tearing it up down there for Baltimore. In this minor league system, especially their AAA roster, they got tons of guys who are ready to go. We saw they just called up Jackson Halladay, and Heston Kjerstad, I think, isn't far behind. But the only thing, like I mentioned, finding everyday at-bats for him with a loaded outfield with Austin Hayes, Santander, Colton Cowser, like I mentioned, and just a great infield as well with a lot of great players. So right now, Kjerstad's tearing it up in the minors, and he might force their hand, no doubt about it. But like I said, I don't know if everyday at-bats are there for him. But if you got an NA spot with just tons of bench spots, I definitely would stash him. And he's available in 70% of fantasy leagues. That's a few hitters I looked at off the wire for week 3 of the fantasy baseball season.